Do you think you'll pay lower taxes in retirement? Really? Many people go into retirement assuming that, but end up paying as much, if not more, in taxes than when they were working. How taxes can affect your retirement is one of the chapters in What's on Wealth, the latest book written by local tax strategist and retirement designer Barry Watts of the WealthCare Corporation. Barry takes you through the many tax considerations you should make before you retire. To get your free copy of What's on Wealth, the book, call 417-200-3500 or go to wattswealth.com. The book is full of actionable retirement tips and strategies Barry has gathered from his more than 30-year career in helping families just like yours retire successfully. Get your free copy of What's on Wealth, the book, now by calling 417-200-3500 or go to wattswealth.com. Advisory services provided through WealthCare Asset Management, LLC.
It's time for What's on Wealth Radio with Barry Watts and your host, Ralph Hipp.
Welcome into our show. The stock market's sure been on a wild ride, hasn't it? From the steep drops to record-breaking gains all in the span of a few weeks, with some of the activity in the market wiping out the losses we had in April. So for retirees around the Ozarks, these swings can be pretty nerve-wracking. What if there's a way to help make sense of all that? On this Sunday morning's What's on Wealth radio show, we're talking about some savvy strategies helping preserve your savings and help keep your retirement on track no matter what the market throws your way for the rest of the year. This is Ralph Hipp along with J. Barry Watts, the main retirement wealth designer of Springfield's WealthCare Corporation. And Barry, you've been traveling, but we're back at home base. And Barry, how are you, sir?
Well, I'm doing very fine, Ralph. Thank you. It's good to talk with you once again. I've got a special guest with us here at the table.
You do.
Introduce to you today. Retirement designer from the WealthCare Corporation, Matt Dean, is here on the microphones for the first time. Hello, Matt.
Hey, Barry. Hey, Ralph. Good to hear from you guys.
Welcome to the show. We're glad to have you here on the mic.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
I think you'll add a lot to the show, and I'm looking forward to having you as a part of what we do together.
And Barry, you and I have something in common. We love to travel to other parts of the world before we come back to our home base and do our show together. But you're just back from Italy and Switzerland. And I was in Australia last October, headed to Canada in June with a tour group from the Topeka, Kansas City area. We love to do that. 46 of us going up there. And you're back from Italy and Switzerland. So I always like to ask you, Barry, did you see anything economically and financially in Italy that you'd like to report back to us?
Well, Ralph, the only thing I saw economically was my credit card just kept going cha-ching, 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 cha-ching every time Kelly bought chocolate. And that's what happens when you go on vacation. And in Switzerland, they think their chocolate is wonderful. I don't think it's any better than the chocolate that you buy over here at the grocery store, frankly. But they're in love with it. And so, you're buying a lot of chocolate and a lot of T-shirts and sweatshirts and
all that stuff.
Things like that. But we had a good time. I would say the cost to travel and live over there is no different really than here. For Kelly and me to sit down and have a meal with no alcohol was about $50. And that's probably what we would spend here in Springfield if we sat down and had a nice sit-down meal at a restaurant or something like that. So
about the same.
Is anything too economically different?
Okay. Matt, are you a world traveler at all? Have you been to other parts of the globe?
Not quite just yet. Only traveling I've done outside the U.S. is vacation to Jamaica and Cayman Islands, and that was quite nice. But I'm looking forward to a trip to Banff before too long. That'd be nice.
That's right. Our group will be headed from Calgary to Vancouver. Barry, I believe you and Kelly are going to be in the Banff area, Lake Louise and all up in there?
We'll be there in June, actually. We're flying into Calgary as well, so I don't know when you guys are going to be there. But we'll be flying into Calgary, and then you us up to Banff. It's
us too. Yeah.
And that's where we'll be spending a couple of weeks. Well, no, not a couple of weeks. We'll be spending about 5 days. In June. We're taking the kids with us, so they're going on that trip, and we're looking forward to being able to be with them. I haven't seen Madison since Christmas, and she only lives in St. Louis. She's not that far away. So I'm really looking forward to seeing she and Zach. I will actually see them soon, and then get to see them again in
Fantastic.
June. So soon and in June. So that's a good thing.
Well, I don't know if Canada will be a state. I don't believe it'll happen. If it happens at all, it won't happen that quickly. So Barry and I be north of the border. We might bump into each other in Calgary, but while we're there, we'll be looking at the market, Barry. But Barry and Matt, let's talk about the market and what is a bear market and what is a bull market, and can we go from one to the other in a day or two? What are your thoughts on the stock market right now?
Well, if we go from a bear to a bull or vice versa in one day, that would be a newsworthy event. Because by definition, a bear market is when the market, defined by the S&P 500, loses 20% from a previous high. So if the market drops 20% from a previous high and it does that in a day, that's a pretty newsworthy day. It has happened before, but that's not really a day that we wanted to participate in, and we hope that that will not occur. Conversely, a bull market is when the market, defined by the S&P 500, rises by 20% or more from a previous low. And I can't really see a time where you get a 20% rise in the entire market in a day's time. So I doubt that that's going to occur. But that's a little definition of what bull and bear is. And now we're going to test Matt's acumen here and see if he knows the answer to this question. Matt, do you know why it's called a bull market or a bear market?
Oh, not off the top of my head. Go ahead and tell me.
Okay, I like the way you answered that. No, because the look he's giving me is I don't have a clue look, Barry. So here's the deal. If you've ever been in a fight with a bear, how does a bear fight?
With big claws.
Big claws. And what does he do with those big claws?
Well, he scratches you.
Yeah, what's his position? Where's the bear positionally?
Well, standing, right?
Yeah, there you go. The bear's standing up on his back legs with his arms. The bear have arms or those legs? Anyway, with his front legs lifted way up and his claws extended, and the bear pushes downward on you. And that is what a bear market is.
And now, the bull bucks up.
Conversely, well, there's a little story with that. When a bull comes after you, what he does is lowers his head to the ground, and he'll scoop you off your feet. And I've had it happen to me. And then he tosses you up into the air over his horns. So a bull market is one where all the momentum is tossing you upward. A bear market is where it's all pushing you downward. How about that for Trivial Pursuit today, Ralph?
Terrific. And we love the visual, Barry. We can visualize the bull and the bear, the way they fight, and the way that the market fights back. And guys, when we see days or weeks of volatility, it seems like an endless story. Red arrows, green arrows, day after day. When we see long periods of this, what can we do in the Ozarks as retirees to be proactive and maybe try to get ahead of the red arrows?
Well, I think the first thing to do, Ralph, is just to give yourself some perspective. Sit back, take a breath, and think about some things. So here's the hard facts on the stock market. Over the 20 years, from 1999 through the end of 2018, the market, as managed by the S&P 500, or I should say measured by the S&P 500, averaged 5.6% per year. Now, people talk to you about a market averaging 9 and 10 and 12 and so forth. And it's all according to what years that you are measuring it. But certainly you shouldn't think that the market's going to give you 10% over the next 20 years, though there are times where that has occurred. There's also a 20-year period I just quoted from 99 to 2018 where it only averaged 5.6% per year. But here's the important part of that story. While the market was averaging 5.6% per year from 1999 through 2018, the average investor returned only 1.9% per year. So the average investor did much more poorly. Is that the way we should say that in English? I'm not sure. I may have hillbillied that up a little.
I think that's right, yeah.
Anyway, the average investor didn't do as well, not nearly as well as the market did. And I think one of the reasons, Ralph, is because the average investor gets scared, the average investor gets jumpy, gets out at the wrong time, gets in at the wrong time, and all of those kinds of things. And so the first thing to do is sit back and take a breath and respond rather than reacting. I think it's very important to respond. And when you respond, there are some things that you need to keep in mind. First of all, if we go all the way back to 1928, there's a fellow by the name of Yardeni, and he researches all of this stuff. So this is Yardeni research. We go all the way back to the Great Depression, 1928. Since that time, there have been 22 official bear markets. Now, the average bear lasts about 14 months, and the average loss in a bear market is about 35%. So there have been 22 times in the past 100 years where that has happened. There have been 25 times in the past 100 years where we had a bull market rising more than 20%. And the average bull market lasts about 5 years. So think about it. The bear market lasts about 14 months on average. A bull market lasts about 5 years on average. And the gains in a bull market can be as much as 400%. From 2009 to 2020, we had a bull market that gave us a 400% return during that time period. But the gains really more likely are going to be about 15% per year during the 5.5-year average of a bull market. Now, Ralph, so those are the extremes. What happens in a bear when it's pressing down on you? What happens the bull is pushing up on you? What you need to realize is over very long periods of time, like over a career in investing, the average return on the S&P 500 is about 7.3%, and that includes all the bull periods and all the bear periods. And so if your expectations are set back there at 7% or less, I like to use 5.5 or 6% personally because I want to under-anticipate, under-promise and over-deliver if at all possible.
Sure.
Then I think you'll have a really better experience. I should insert here, by the way, that all the lawyers require us to say, past performance is no guarantee of future result. All investment involves risk. You could lose money. That's true. We know all of that. So now having said that, here's what I want you to realize. In the stock market, over long periods of time, you have more to gain than you do to lose. And so I would highly encourage you to have an optimistic attitude even during turbulent times like the times that we're in currently.
Barry, I think you're exactly right about all of that. One thing to keep in mind about long-term investing, like you've said, is a little bit of perspective about where we are in the market. It's really easy to feel kind of twitchy and impatient when times are bad. We're looking for an appropriate time to get back in. Maybe the thing to do right now is just have a little bit of dry powder in case it can come handy in just a matter of weeks.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned dry powder because our portfolios that we manage at WealthCare right now are about 60% in cash. And that cash is dry powder. In fact, I'm going to be deploying some of that dry powder next week. I already have it scheduled to put another 10% of that money back to work in the markets. The challenge right now is you don't know when Trump's going to open his mouth or twitch his fingers. And the tweets are what get us, Ralph. And so we're always tweet away from a big loss or a big gain.
And guys, how would you help clients around Springfield figure out, you can do a risk analysis on their portfolio, and we could have some very good days, some very good opportunities in the market. How to help us analyze our risk right now and where we don't have that fear of missing out, and where we could, have a really good day in the market with what we've invested?
Well, if you want to avoid FOMO, fear of missing out, if you want to avoid that, you've got to have a strategy for how you get back in the market. And or how you get out of the market, too. You've got to have a strategy for knowing when to be in and when to be out. And we've got a very interesting strategy that we use at WealthCare Asset Management, which is the company that we own that does that kind of work, that helps people to know when they should be in the market, when they should be out of the market. And the strategy has to do, Ralph, with going to lunch in a small farm town in Kansas. And so when we come back from the break here in just a moment, maybe we'll start the next segment by talking about that strategy so that people can learn how going to lunch is a lot like picking investments.
All right, hang on to that thought. This is Ralph Hipp along with J. Barry Watts and Matt Dean of the WealthCare Corporation. That number to reach any of them over there, 417-200-3500, 200-3500 here in Springfield. It is time for our break, and you're listening to our Sunday Morning Watts on Wealth. Back with our conversation. We'll continue it in just a moment.
Concerned about your retirement plans? Barry Watts can guide you to a confident retirement. Set up a meeting by texting VISIT to 417-200-3500. That's 417-200-3500.
Imagine for a moment that an intense storm is pounding your house. Will your roof leak? Will the siding peel away? Will your basement flood? If your house is properly built and maintained, you'll be fine. But what about your 401k or your investments? The stock market has had a pretty good run the last few years, but is its current turmoil making you feel uneasy? Are you confident your portfolio is built to weather a financial storm? Now may be a great time to get a second opinion on your retirement plan. Call Barry Watts and the team at WealthCare at 417-200-3500 now. They'll examine your portfolio and show you if your investments are in need of some weatherproofing. Call Barry Watts and the team at WealthCare today at 417-200-3500 to get your no-obligation second opinion. Don't let your retirement get caught in the rain. Call 417-200-3500. Investment advisory services are provided by WealthCare Asset Management, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Investing involves risk.
Picture your first day of retirement. What does it look like? Let's make that dream a reality. Start with Barry Watts' Wealth Care Kit. It includes vital information on the biggest retirement challenges. To get your kit, text KIT to 417-200-3500. That's KIT to 417-200-3500.
Welcome back into Watts on Wealth, the radio show. This is Ralph Hipp with Barry Watts and Matt Dean of the Wealth Care Corporation. By the way, Barry and I are on TV every Sunday morning all over Springfield. Hope you've seen our TV shows already this morning, and the radio is a big part of that. And Matt Dean joining us on the radio side. Barry, let's talk about strategies and how you help people develop those. It's like having lunch at a restaurant in Kansas or Missouri. How does that work?
Well, I don't know if all of our strategies are that way, but when you've heard me tell that story in the past, Ralph, talking about lunch in a small Kansas farm town, that has to do with how we know whether to be invested in the market at a given time or not, and where to be invested in the market. So here's the deal, Ralph. You know, nobody knows what's going to happen in the market, whether it's going up or whether it's going down. But what we do know is this, that the stock market is just a big auction market is all it is. And so if you were going to have an auction and it was a beautiful spring day where the temperature was 75 degrees and you're going to be selling grandma's house at the auction because grandma died, well, you're going to have a lot of people show up at that auction because it's a beautiful day to go to the auction. And the more people who show up at the auction, the more people who bring money to the auction, the higher prices are going to be at the auction, so prices are going to go up. Conversely, if you have your auction on a day when the sleet is falling and the snow is 6 inches deep already, nobody's showing up at the auction and there's nobody bringing money to buy anything, and so prices fall. So those are examples of demand when prices are rising and supply when prices are going down. Now, when you go to the New York Stock Exchange, which is nothing but a big auction, and I used to walk on the floor of the exchange in New York, Ralph, when all the people were down there trading. Today, when you walk on the floor of the exchange, it's like walking in a ghost town because computers have taken over all of that trading function. But when you go to the auction market today, what you're looking for is still the crowd. Is the crowd rushing toward the market and bringing money? Because if they are, that's going to lift prices. And if the crowd is taking their money out of the market and walking away from the market, that's going to allow prices to fall. And we have the ability, because of the advances in technology, to measure the markets today and to know what kind of crowd there is lined up to take money to the market and what kind of crowd there is lined up to take money from the market and which line is the longest. And that helps us discern whether or not we should be in the market or out of the market. And so that's the first tool that we use, is an algorithmic strategy that helps us to know whether or not the markets are in demand or in supply.
All right, Barry, thanks for the advice on the strategy sessions there. You can have your session with Barry. Give him a call and make that happen right away. Leave a message today. You can text the word visit or call first thing during the week at 417-200-3500 to the Wealth Care Corporation. 417 in Springfield, 200-3500. Well, let's jump ahead to our main topic of the day, and that is that old familiar saying, plan for the worst and hope for the best. Now, we have said that hope's not a strategy, but you got to plan for the worst and hope for the best. And we begin with those huge medical bills. Some are regular and routine. Some are thrust on you suddenly, taking a big, unexpected chunk out of your insurance and your retirement savings. You go, oh, we've pulled money out of both of these things. Big medical bills directly cause a whopping 2/3 of bankruptcies in this country, the leading cause of having that happen. So, gentlemen, any healthcare emergency, a catastrophic illness or accident can really knock you off your feet physically, and it can sure do it financially, can't it?
Well, Ralph, it certainly can. And, just last night, Kelly was paying some bills at home. I'm in my chair, kind of kicked back, and she's over at the counter writing some checks. And one of the comments she had was, she said, boy, we're sure paying a lot to Cox Hospital. And so, we're respectively, we're in pretty good health. But it's expensive is the whole point. And so if you have a medical catastrophe, the cost of that can be ginormous, and you have to have a plan for how you deal with that. Now, we cannot prevent bad things from happening, but we can plan for the worst. So if there is an accident or an emergency or a serious medical diagnosis, then you and your loved ones can focus on healing and not on financial headaches. And so having a plan for how you're going to deal with those things is a part of it. And at the Wealthcare Corporation, when we're designing retirement plans, one of the things we're considering, Ralph, I think that people often think that it's all about the investments. And really, retirement planning is only 20% investments. It's about 80% all the other things. And one of the other things is healthcare and how you're going to pay for healthcare and the expenses that you may incur in long-term care. And so you've got to have a strategy for that. And some people think, well, it's not possible to strategize for it because the costs of that are just so enormous, and they are really big. But Ralph, I had some people in the office just last week who we had done some of that planning for, and now they're at the point where their parents, in this case, this lady's mother, she just put her into long-term care, and she was dealing with all the angst related to that. And the husband looked at me and he said, boy, I'm sure am glad we put our long-term care strategy in place. And he said, in fact, if I'd known then what I do now, we'd have probably even put a bigger strategy in place. So the point is, there are things that we can do that will help to mitigate those particular problems when they come down the road. And, Ralph, something that is going to happen with regard to healthcare is if you live long enough, you're going to hit age 65. And when you hit age 65 in the United States, you go on Medicare. And something kind of special here on today's show is the fact that at our microphones, we have Medicare Matt, who is the wealth care specialist in all things Medicare. And so, Matt, when people come to you going on to Medicare, what is it that they're looking for, and what do you help them to do?
Well, I think they're looking for clarity, if that. More than anything else, really. There's this big question that seniors have as soon as they turn age 65, and that is, well, how do I deal with this Medicare question in my life? Am I going to get a supplement? Am I going to get an Advantage plan?
Why do I even need that? Doesn't Medicare just pay for everything?
Oh, no. There's so many things that Medicare does not cover that are absolutely essential to have covered. Like, Barry, if you were hospitalized and age 65, Part A would pay for your hospitalization, but not the first $1,600. You're going to have to pay that out of pocket. Shouldn't we get a plan in place to deal with that?
Well, I don't know. Wouldn't it be just cheaper to pay the $1,600 out of my pocket?
Absolutely not. Because if you incurred one of these visits to the hospital more than once in a given year, then the insurance beats that cost than you paying it out of pocket.
Oh, okay. And I assume if you're going to the hospital, you're probably going to have more costs than just that $1,600.
That's exactly right.
So when people come to you with Medicare questions, then those questions relate to how are we going to pay for the things that Medicare doesn't pay for.
That's exactly right.
And what are our options for how we do that?
Well, you can get with a Medicare supplement plan. And the way that we think about Medicare supplements is you pay for it in advance regardless of whether you need that care. So supplements tend to have more robust coverage for these sorts of things. When we think about Medicare Advantage, we think of it as a pay-as-you-go sort of strategy, where you'll have deductibles or co-insurance.
So you're saying there's two ways. There's Medicare Advantage or there's a Medicare supplement.
That's exactly right.
And a Medicare supplement is like traditional insurance. You just pay for it and then everything's covered.
Right.
And Medicare Advantage is you participate along the way.
That's exactly right.
Now, I've heard it said that Medicare Advantage is actually not Medicare. It's the government has essentially sold off your health care to a private insurance company. Is that right?
Yeah, that is exactly right. And that differs from original Medicare, where you're getting these benefits from the federal government and then buying a traditional insurance plan to pay for the things it doesn't.
And so in that case, instead of the government calling the tune what happens to your health care, the insurance company calls the tune.
Right. And you would be surprised that a lot of people really don't like that, because then whenever health insurance companies are stepping in with these benefits, they get involved with our lives and they drive decision making as to how we receive care. So, Barry, if you needed a knee surgery, you can probably get that approved by your Medicare Advantage plan, but they might want to have you rehab, whatever joint is ailing you for a few weeks before you get the surgery. And a lot of people just find that annoying.
Yeah, well, I find it's annoying to have insurance companies telling me what to do at any point in time. Now, Matt, I travel a lot, as Ralph has brought up in previous shows when we've talked about all the places we like to go. So here's a question about that. Is there a difference between my healthcare coverage when I'm traveling with Medicare Advantage versus Medicare supplementation?
Absolutely. Medicare Advantage plans always cover out-of-network emergency healthcare services, because if you found yourself in an emergency, that should be covered. Now, when it comes to whether you're a big traveler or a snowbird, and maybe you go to Texas or Arizona for a couple months out of the colder months of the year, then you don't have to worry about networks with a Medicare supplement. With Medicare Advantage plans, they might have a nationwide network, but you have a big question of, well, whenever I'm traveling extendedly, will I be covered in the place I want to be covered?
So the point is, if I've got a Medicare supplement, I can get coverage anywhere in the United States. I just go to the hospital, hand them a Medicare card, I check in, I'm good to go.
That's exactly right. You don't even need a referral from your doc.
And if I have a Medicare Advantage plan, then I've got to be in a Medicare Advantage network, and wherever I'm traveling may or may not be in the network. I'm pretty sure Switzerland wasn't in the network.
That's exactly right. In fact, many Medicare supplement plans have coverages for foreign travel, whereas a lot of Medicare Advantage plans just simply don't.
All right, Matt, so we're about to go to a break here, but if somebody's listening and they're at this age 65 where they need to deal with Medicare and they would like to have somebody kind of guide them through the process of supplements and Advantage, would it be okay if they call you?
Absolutely. Call away.
All right, and the phone number for them to reach you is 417-200-3500, 417-200-3500, and ask for Medicare Matt. And Matt Dean from the Wealth Care Corporation will be glad to help you resolve those Medicare questions. Back to you, Ralph.
Yes, thank you, Barry and Matt. Great conversation there. And if you are traveling somewhere, if you'd like to travel and see the world, and does my Medicare supplement cover me? And check with Matt on that at 417-200-3500. Barry, I do have a minute here to mention your book, which is also called Watts on Wealth. How can we get a copy of the book this weekend or next week?
Well, we'd love for you to have a copy of Watts on Wealth. Because that's why I wrote the book, is because I wanted you to know about all the things we talk about on the show. And what we did, more or less, is took questions that we get on the show and on the TV show, and we turned those questions into chapters of the book, helping people to understand with all the different things that are involved. How am I going to handle income? How do I've saved all this money in my 401k. How do I turn that into income during my retirement years? What are my taxes going to look like? Is there anything I can do to reduce taxes in retirement? Can I avoid taxation on Social Security? How am I going to handle Medicare and long-term care expenses? Things of that nature. All of those are a part of what we cover in the book, Watts on Wealth. So if you'd like a copy of the book, all you have to do is text the word book, B-O-O-K. Text book, B-O-O-K, to 417-200-3500. 417-200-3500. Text the word book, and we'll put an autographed copy in the mail to you today.
Fantastic. Friends, don't go anywhere. We're just halfway through with Barry Watts and Matt Dean of the Wealth Care Corporation. This is Ralph Hipp. Time for a little news. We'll be back in just a few minutes here. Don't go far.
Uncertain about your retirement future? Let Barry Watts help you retire with certainty. Schedule a meeting by texting VISIT to 417-200-3500. That's 417-200-3500. Retirement Planning Made Simple with Barry Watts. His kit includes a retirement income planning booklet, plus information on taxes, Social Security, and more. Get your Wealth Care Kit by texting KIT to 417-200-3500. Text KIT to 417-200-3500.
We are back with more of the Watts on Wealth radio show this lovely Sunday morning, and Barry Watts is along with Matt Dean at the headquarters of the Wealth Care Corporation, and I'm your radio host, Ralph Hipp. We're discussing planning for the worst and hoping for the best. Gentlemen, I'd like to ask you about this estimate from Fidelity, and they're fine people too, but they say it's at least $300,000 of health care costs, and that could be on the low side if we're healthy. That doesn't include long-term care. Can you discuss some of the concepts of even if we plan for $300,000 to $400,000 set aside for healthcare, if it's in the plan, how do we keep an illness or accident from financially wrecking us, guys?
Well, I think the first question to ask yourself is, do I have built into my retirement plan anything to protect me against a healthcare catastrophe? And most people, Ralph, when they come to see us, do not have that. Now, some people don't have enough resources to build that protection in. But there are many people, many people who have enough resources to build the protection if they only knew how to build the protection, if they only knew how to put that protection in place. And so that is one of the things that good retirement planning can do for you. Holistic retirement planning, the way we do it at the Wealthcare Corporation, is help you not only figure out how you're going to turn your 401k into income that lasts the rest of your life, but turn it into something that will protect you in the event you go into a long-term care situation or you have a catastrophic healthcare event. And so the point is there are solutions out there for many people if they just know where to look. And fortunately at WealthCare, because this is what we do all day, every day for a living, we know where to look and we can tell you whether or not there's a plan that will fit you or won't fit you, a strategy and solution that will fit you or won't. And about 2/3 of our clients actually have in place strategies that will protect them in the event of a great healthcare catastrophe.
Guys, in the past year, we've seen hearing aids could be sold over the counter at a lot of places. And if you don't have dentures, you just have routine dental work. And you think, Matt and Barry, well, I'll just put it on my Medicare tab. And what does Medicare cover, Matt, and what does it not cover? Things that we would assume that are just picked up by the government, especially, that's not going to be picked up by the government now.
Ralph, that's such a great question. So many people have the conception that Medicare will pay for dentures, hearing aids, and any sort of other healthcare costs that we're not expecting. Well, in some cases, there are Medicare Advantage plans available that will pay for dental, vision, and hearing things. But
Medicare won't pay for it, right?
Medicare won't pay for it.
So they're right about that. So the question is, do they have a plan that'll pay for it?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I just want to be sure I was understanding how to think about that correctly. So the solution then may be a Medicare Advantage plan that covers some of those kind of things.
Absolutely.
Now, why would the insurance company be willing to cover those things if Medicare doesn't require it?
Well, to draw more people in so that they can get the insurance that you need. Because if you're looking for one specific thing with your insurance plan and many of these other plans don't cover it, then you can get yourself a competitive advantage by offering more insurance.
Okay. So there is a way to solve those problems for the things that Medicare won't cost or Medicare won't cover. Now, but like if I need chiropractic, Medicare will cover that for me, right?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, so they won't give me hearing aids, they won't fix my teeth, and they won't crack my back. Well, that so far doesn't sound really good. What if I need a little nip and tuck somewhere along the way? I want a little plastic work done.
Nope, afraid not.
Here's one. I bet you won't know the answer to this. I was at the doctor the other day, and he said, Barry, it's time for blepharoplasty. Do you know what blepharoplasty is?
Oh, my.
Yeah. All right. Well, what is safe to talk about on the radio? That's where they lift your eyelids. Because this was the eye doctor I was at, and he said, Barry, part of your vision problem is, he said, your eyelids have drooped down just a little bit over I guess it's your cornea. Yeah. And so he said, that's the reason. Your eyes aren't quite wide open enough. And he said, you need to go have some of that kind of tucked away. He said, it happens to guys as they get older like you do.
Yeah.
So blepharoplasty, is that something that Medicare will cover?
No, not typically.
Now, do you know that for a fact? Because I think Medicare would cover that. Actually.
Well, I think it depends on medical necessity.
Well, that's the point. Yes, right. And are you doing this for your good looks, or are you doing this?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. If it was medical or cosmetic, the distinction between that. Yeah. Guys, let's also discuss, we mentioned buckets of a bucket for the first year of retirement savings, and maybe the second bucket for 2 to 5 years, and the third bucket for long-term of 5 to 10 to 15 years of putting money aside for that. And does that bucket scenario apply, Barry and Matt? We need a healthcare bucket for the first year, and a healthcare for this, and a healthcare for long range. Can we adapt that strategy to that?
Look at that.
How would you look at it?
We wouldn't look at it that way, and here's why. Because you may not need a healthcare bucket for the first year, but you may need a big bucket in year 3 or year 4 or whatever. So the point is not having a healthcare bucket for the first year or second year. Don't tie a year to the money. The point is you need to have an overall strategy that says, if I'm going to retire, one of the expenses that could come my way is healthcare expense. And do I have money allocated for that? Do I have a method and a strategy that will pay for healthcare expenses whenever they come up? And so building a good retirement plan, a part of that good retirement plan is to have a healthcare strategy incorporated into it.
Matt, do you have any other thoughts on the bucket strategy? And you totally agree with what Barry says there?
Yeah, well, I absolutely agree with Barry. But even a bigger question is, if we're going to earmark some money that we have saved up for retirement to take care of healthcare costs and long-term care expenses, then the next question is, well, how much do I need to earmark for that? And in what way do I need to set this aside to make sure it'll take care of all the things that I need it to later? And the truth is, it really just depends, case by case.
Barry and Matt and I are talking about planning for the worst and hoping for the best, and specifically targeting your healthcare costs of the future. And fully 66.5%, so that's pretty much 2/3 to me, guys, 2 of every 3. 2/3 of bankruptcies are caused by medical bills. And once you have that healthcare emergency, a catastrophe of a sickness or accident very suddenly forcing things to change, can a solid plan help navigate our way around that, Barry? Any other thoughts on the plan?
Having a plan is always better than not having a plan. I don't know of anyone who has ever succeeded more because they didn't bother with a plan. So here's the thing you have to keep in mind. If a healthcare catastrophe comes upon you, something as simple as you just got old and it was finally time for you to go into long-term care at the nursing home or something like that. Imagine how rapidly your life savings could shrink if you don't have a strategy and a plan in place to help protect your money and your family from those skyrocketing healthcare costs and the financial risk that brings to you. Healthcare is certainly not going to get any cheaper in the future. It's never going to cost less than it does today. And so if it's going to keep going up, and if the medical expense is in your future and not in your past, and isn't it in all of our futures, well, then we have to have a way to pay for it. Now, Medicare is going to be a part of that, but it doesn't cover everything. And the out-of-pocket costs can be so expensive as to be hundreds of thousands of dollars over your retirement years. And that's why you have to have a plan in place. Now, at the Wealthcare Corporation, Medicare Matt is the member of our team who really directs the healthcare planning side. The long-term care planning side is something all of our advisors are equipped to do. But one of the things that we do in designing retirement plans is we put strategies in place to deal not only with Medicare and the things that Medicare won't pay for, but to deal with long-term care costs and all of the other kinds of surprises that might come your way. Like what happens if one spouse dies prematurely? And by the way, doesn't everyone die prematurely? That's not true. I guess there are some people who make it to a ripe old age and die, and so we would call that dying maturely. But for most folks, it's going to be premature. And so the point is, you retire today, and 5 years in, your spouse dies. Well, how does that change your story? Because one of your Social Security checks is going to go away. And does any of your pension go away if there was a pension? And your tax bill is going to go up when that occurs. So you have to think about all of those things, and we test the plans, and we say, okay, if one of the partners dies, what happens? If one of the partners goes into long-term care, what happens? If the stock market tanks and goes down 35%, what happens? And we test our planning, and if we pass all of those tests, what it allows our clients to say is, okay, I've got this. I can go ahead and retire and do so with a great sense of confidence because I know everything is going to be all right. And so, Ralph, what I want to say is if you've been listening to the show a while, and you've decided that I'm not a total lunatic and that I do know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
And you need help thinking through these things. Then I want to invite you to call us at the Wealthcare Corporation. We'll be happy to set up a time for you to visit with one of our advisors like Matt Dean, who's here on the show today, or Jeremy Zickifus, or Joey Ledford, or maybe even me. I'm out of the office a lot and not available as much, but we'll make sure you get to sit with an advisor who'll help you to design a plan that covers all of those costs and expenses. All you've got to do is be sure that you pick up the phone today and you call us, and you do that at 417-200-3500, 417-200-3500. Now, when you call, because it's Sunday morning, you're going to get a voicemail. Just to leave a message and say, hey, I want an appointment to talk about a retirement plan like Barry talked about on the show. And somebody will call you back very first thing Monday morning, and they'll schedule you a time to come in and talk with one of our advisors.
Yep. 417-200-3500 to Barry and Matt and Jeremy and the whole team at the Wealth Care Corporation. I'll phrase my final question this way, gentlemen. With 70% of people over 65 needing long-term care and the median cost of a private room at a nursing home being around $100,000, gentlemen, my last question, how do you help us pay for getting into the nursing home but still staying out of the bankruptcy court?
Well, we don't give all of our secrets away here on the show, Ralph. That's going to be different from person to person.
Right.
But the simple fact is nursing home costs about $10,000 a month. And so you've got to have a strategy for how you're going to do that. If you take what you've got saved up and just divide it by $10,000 a month, that tells you about how many months you can spend in the nursing home. But what happens if you stay longer and then there's no money left to pay that bill? And by the way, what happens if you eat up all the family's money that way and there's nothing left for your spouse to live on when you die after your nursing home stay? So the point is you have to have a strategy to deal with those things. And there are strategies that will multiply your money in the event of a nursing healthcare catastrophe. And we use those kind of strategies to help people pay their bills. And the strategy for this guy is different than the strategy from that gal because their money is different, their situation is different, their age is different, their costs are going to be different. And so there are different strategies we bring to the table for different solutions. But one thing we know for sure is that the traditional long-term care strategies no longer work because they're so expensive. The cost just keeps going up every year. And then if you die without having gone into the nursing home, you've lost all that money. So we like other kinds of strategies that make sure you don't lose the money. And we can help you with that at the Wealth Care Corporation. Just call us, 417-200-3500. And we'll be glad to help solve that problem. Thanks for talking to us today here on What's on Wealth.
Thank you, Matt, for all your thoughts, too. And we'll be back with our final segment of What's on Wealth, the radio show, in just a moment. Don't go away.
Barry Watts makes retirement planning easy with his kit, which includes a retirement income planning booklet and key information on taxes, Social Security, and income. Request your Wealth Care Kit by texting KIT to 417-200-3500. Text KIT to 417-200-3500.
Do you think you'll pay lower taxes in retirement? Really? Many people go into retirement assuming that, but end up paying as much, if not more, in taxes than when they were working. How taxes can affect your retirement is one of the chapters in What's on Wealth, the latest book written by local tax strategist and retirement designer Barry Watts of the Wealth Care Corporation. Barry takes you through the many tax considerations you should make before you retire. To get your free copy of What's on Wealth, the book, call 417-200-3500 or go to wattswealth.com. The book is full of actionable retirement tips and strategies Barry has gathered from his more than 30-year career in helping families just like yours retire successfully. Get your free copy of What's on Wealth, the book, now by calling 417-200-3500 or go to wattswealth.com. Advisory services provided through WealthCare Asset Management, LLC.
Retirement planning made simple with Barry Watts. His kit includes a retirement income planning booklet, plus information on taxes, Social Security, and more. Get your Wealth Care Kit by texting KIT to 417-200-3500. Text KIT to 417-200-3500.
There are words of wisdom sure standing the test of time, and now Barry and I are going to share some timeless wisdom and advice for you to keep in mind for your retirement. Barry, I'll give you a quote and would love for you to talk about what it has to do with retirement planning these days. And here we go with good old Ben Franklin, who's still on the 100. We've mentioned Ben Franklin now and then on the show. And he says not only a penny saved is a penny earned, but he also said, wealth is not his that has it, but his that enjoys it. So how is he speaking to us over the centuries with that quote? What's he saying? What does it mean to you?
Well, Ralph, I think the point is that we've all known rich people who were unhappy people or who were grumpy. The last thing I want to be is a grumpy guy. Unfortunately, I'm afraid that I am sometimes, and I don't mean to be. So if I happen to be grumpy with you, I apologize. I think one of the things that happens as we age is we get a little bit grumpy once in a while, and I don't want that to be the case. My point, though, is that all the wealth in the world doesn't fix grumpiness. I think what fixes grumpiness is good health and good friends and good relationships with people and a sense of meaning and purpose. Those are all the things that make you rich. They're things that money simply can't buy. And so while having wealth makes things easier, it certainly does. There's no doubt about that. It's better to have money. But money alone doesn't keep you from being miserable.
Yogi Berra was one of the most famous baseball players of all time. I don't believe he ever came to Hammond's Field or played a game before our time with the Springfield Cardinals. But Yogi was famous for his yogi-isms. And as we're going through these days where a dollar isn't worth a dollar anymore, one of Yogi's sayings, he was way ahead of his time. He said, "A nickel ain't worth a dime anymore." So what's he talking about with that, Barry?
A nickel ain't worth a dime anymore. By the way, do you know, Ralph, where Yogi Berra came from? Do you know his story?
Well, it's not too far away, is it?
No, Yogi came off the hill in St. Louis.
Great,
So,
yeah.
he's a Missourian. And when I think about the hill in St. Louis these days, I think about all the restaurants I like to go to, which reminds me of another yogiism I'll share with you. Have you eaten on the hill, Ralph?
I have not, Barry. No,
There's a lot of restaurants there on the hill that are a lot of fun to go to. There's Charlie Guido's, Regazzi's, Mama Capizzi's, and then if you want a really fancy meal where they come and dust off the tablecloth after you take every bite, basically. Certainly if you get up to go to the restroom and come back, they will have folded your napkin again.
Oh, nice.
You. That's Dominic's.
Yeah.
So one of the things that Yogi said, by the way, is he said, "Oh, that place is popular and busy. Nobody goes there anymore." Which, if you'll think about it, doesn't quite make sense.
But it alludes to something you said earlier.
A lot of people are going there.
Yeah, you'd mentioned.
So when Yogi says a nickel ain't worth a dime anymore, I think what he's talking about is inflation. I think that's what he meant to talk about. And interestingly enough, on Social Security as an example, from 2000 to 2023, the buying power of a Social Security check has dropped by 36%. So during your lifetime, your retirement lifetime, whatever you can buy with your Social Security check the day that you start taking Social Security, there's a pretty good chance that by the time you reach the end of your life, you'll only be able to buy a half to two-thirds of as much goods and services as you could buy with that check when you retired initially. This particular topic came up in a phone conversation I had with my dad just a few days ago. There's a restaurant over in Golden City, in the northwest part of the Ozarks. And in Golden City, there's this little kind of almost hole-in-the-wall restaurant called Cookies. And what Cookies is famous for in Golden City is their pies. The meringue on a pie at Cookies will be like 10 inches tall. So it's quite an experience to go to Cookies, and everybody wants to get a pie when they go to Cookies. Well, Mom and Dad had been driving through Golden City, and as they were coming back through, they stopped to eat at Cookies, and Dad said, "You know, Mom and I, we just stopped to eat at Cookies," and he said it cost us $50 to get through lunch.
I know. Yeah.
And he said, "I just can't believe that most of those farmers around there are going to pay $50 to have lunch at Cookies." Well, I won't pontificate on what farmers are going to pay for lunch in Golden City. I will point out, though, that $50 for lunch at Cookies, well, I could buy a $50 lunch in Milan, Italy, by the way, and that was a kind of a fancy high-end lunch. So apparently the costs are about the same in Milan as they are in Golden City. All of it, though, is driven by inflation. And the concern we have, and I think this is one of the things that Trump is trying to address right now, the concern we have is that the cost of living is going higher and higher and higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. And those of us, even those of us who are in the upper income brackets and who are in the higher percentages of wealth, I will tell you, it affects me. It concerns me. It makes me look to the future with some sense of, I don't know, is this going to be all right or not? And the truth is, for me and my family, yes, it's going to be all right. But I don't know what it's going to be like for my kids and my grandkids. And so when Yogi Berra said a nickel ain't worth a dime anymore, I think that's what he was addressing.
All right. So from St. Louis, we move to Hannibal, Missouri, and Mark Twain. I love this one. October is one of the most dangerous months in which to speculate stocks. The others are January, February, March, April, May, and he goes all the way through the year, so we got to chuckle about that. What is Mark Twain saying to us? And any month of the year is a bad month to speculate.
Well, speculation is certainly something that we don't want to be a part of, Ralph. And Mark Twain was shining a light on something that's painful, and it's simply this, that people don't pay attention when they should pay attention. And then when the markets go haywire, like they do from time to time, people tend to pay too much attention. They start being grabby, and they start trying to grab a hold of their investments and their accounts and do something about it. So rather than being casual and laissez-faire until you suddenly hear news that the markets have tanked and then you get all excited and upset, I want to tell you that instead, I think you should develop an overall plan. And you need to stick to your plan. And a part of that plan needs to be how you approach investing. And at the Wealth Care Corporation, I'll just tell you that it starts with this. First of all, we think that everybody should have some protected principal. We call it money down in the basement, the foundation of your plan, so that when the tornado comes through and makes a mess of everything that's up above the ground, the money that you have in the basement foundation part of your plan is safe and is not affected by the economic and financial storms of the stock market. So everybody should have some money. How much? Well, it's different. We have people who've got 20% down in the basement. We have people who have 70% down in the basement. It really doesn't matter to me. I don't think there's a right amount. I think you just need to approach retirement by making sure you've got protected principal in the basement. And then with the money that you're going to expose to risk so that it can grow a little better perhaps than average over time, you have to have a strategy for how you do that. And Ralph, you've heard me talk on the show many times about Kansas farm towns and about how we know based on the crowd that's gathered at the restaurant where the best restaurant is. And by the same token, we can follow the crowd, whether they're taking money into the market or pulling money out of the market.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And knowing whether there are more people moving into or out of the market, we know if the market's in supply or demand and what's most likely to happen to the market next. So we have to have a strategy for how we're going to know when we're buying, how we're going to know when we're selling, and even a strategy for how to know what to buy and sell. Because in the same way we know whether or not people are moving toward the markets, we know what segments and sectors of the markets they're moving to and out of. And at no time is everybody moving equally into every sector. Sometimes tech is a demand sector, and sometimes it's in supply. Sometimes utilities are in demand, sometimes supply. Sometimes finance is in demand, sometimes it's in supply. So you have to know those things. And if you know those things, it gets relatively easy to make these particular decisions. And so the strategies that we use are designed to first protect you, and then secondly, to optimize your approach so that hopefully you experience a little less volatility than the average person when they're investing. And that's how we approach the financial end, the investing end of retirement planning. But there's so much more to retirement planning than just investment. And that's why it's important we deal with these issues like long-term care and like turning your 401k into income and like how you're going to pay for the things that Medicare won't and about how to get your estate plan in order. All of that is a part of holistic retirement planning, and that's what we do for people at the Wealth Care Corporation. We hope you'll let us do it for you. All you've got to do is call us at 417-200-3500. In fact, if you want right now, you can just text the word VISIT, VISIT, to 417-200-3500. And someone will be back in touch with you and schedule a time for us to have a telephone conversation and figure out whether or not we can be of assistance to you.
This is a Venezuelan proverb I've got, Barry. We don't know the author of this, but very smart. He says, "He who doesn't look ahead gets left behind." So how about that one? And what are they saying here in our current environment? We have this proverb from Venezuela.
He who doesn't look ahead gets left behind. Well, Ralph, what that says is be prudent, pay attention. Because so many people aren't paying attention. I think it's important that we make plans for 15 and 20 and 30 years from now. Pay attention. Now, we have to adjust those plans. But the point is, it's a lot easier to adjust a plan than it is to do something when you don't even have a plan in the first place. So a prudent retiree is going to have a plan. They're going to be paying attention, and they know what their income is going to look like every year from now throughout the rest of their lifetime. And so I think the other part of that is have someone driving your bus that has that plan and knows how to execute that plan for you. If you've got someone, good for you. But if you don't have someone who talks about it in this way, maybe you need to visit us at the Wealth Care Corporation and get a second opinion. We're happy to help you look at your plan, or if you don't have a plan, help you develop a plan. All you have to do is text the word VISIT, 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 to 417-200-3500. And that will start the process for allowing us to have a conversation about how to make things better for you in retirement. Hey, Ralph, that's it for today. It's been great talking to you on the show today.
Barry, thanks for a great hour, and appreciate your wisdom on the timeless advice and those great quotes we gave you. Thank you very much for that, Barry.
Good being with you.
That'll do it for What's on Wealth, the radio show. Hope you'll join us again next Sunday right here, and have a terrific week.
Thank you for stopping by What's on Wealth. If you would like Barry and his team to help you make a plan to get to and through retirement, or would simply like a second opinion on your current plan, give us a call today at 417-200-3500. That's 417-200-3500. And join us again next week for What's on Wealth.
WealthCare Corporation provides tax strategy, tax compliance, accounting, and insurance services through its affiliate American Tax Strategies, LLC. Investment advisory services are provided by WealthCare Asset Management, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Past performance never guarantees future results. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for information and entertainment purposes only and should not be used as the basis for personal financial decisions without first consulting a qualified advisor. The information and opinions you've heard are believed reliable but cannot be guaranteed as to accuracy and completeness.